Galen's proposition. As they entered the back door of the inn, Lilias looked over to see the distraught and disheveled Rella being led by the very man she had warned him against, and for whom she felt a powerful aversion. He carried on his person, also, a long, light bow and a quiver of several arrows. She watched them enter the main hall and move quickly to the stairs, but she managed to intercept the pair and began to immediately scream at Galen, already convinced of his guilt. "What have you done to this poor maiden, you monstrous ape? Have you no shame at all? If you have hurt or defiled this child in any way, I will be happy to tear you limb from limb, and feed your entrails to my dogs. Release her at once, you perverted brute." Galen took his hand off his ward and held up his palms innocently. "I am not a rapist, madame. I merely snatched this poor creature from the talons of a horrible man when I encountered him assaulting her in the woods. I swear to you I have not harmed her." Rella wiped her face upon her filthy sleeve and looked up at Lilias, who was preparing to strike Galen with the frying pan she currently wielded. "It is true, ma'am. What he says is true. This kind man has done me a great service, and has prevented Alva from doing me great harm, who now lies in the woods yonder," she pointed, "with an arrow in his back, and his pants at his knees. Please allow me to retire to my own fashion, and perhaps tomorrow I will be recovered." Lilia stepped back, and, her grip still white-knuckled, she lowered the makeshift weapon. "Very well. If it is as you say, then this man has done us all a great service by assisting you. That filthy Alva! I knew he was bad news from the very beginning. I would have killed him myself had I been there. Oh, you poor dear child!" Her face softened, and she ushered them to the staircase. With only a slightly suspicious gaze, she watched Galen escort the sagging, bedraggled Rella up to her room. When they reached her door, she paused and gazed down at her filthy, torn stockings, and realized she was missing a shoe. She almost burst into tears again, but held them back, and asked, "Kind Sir Galen, will you please sit with me for a spell while I gather my thoughts? I know it seems improper, but I feel that being alone at this moment would cause me great distress." Galen looked down at her pretty, tear-stained face. "Of course, Miss Rella, I would consider it my duty to do so." And together they entered a room and sat in adjacent chairs by the window in silence, listening to the raucous celebration downstairs reach a fever pitch as the stars came out and the moon rose. Eventually, after sitting mutely for a long time, his face thoughtful and distant, Galen spoke. "Rella, I must confess to you that tonight, when I helped you, it was because I have been both following you and observing your movements. Please do not think me tactless or crass. This may not be the time for it, but forthrightness seems appropriate after what happened. I was not following you for any personally sinister reasons, but rather because I have been hired to transport you to the city of Troysonet on the far northern coast. I was to perform this task with or without your permission, but given the circumstances, I think that you will want to come with me." He put his fingers to his temples for a moment, as though overcome with guilt or pain. Rella sat in shocked silence for another moment and asked Galen, "What on earth for? And by whom? What use could I possibly be to anyone in Troysonet unless they have a shortage of barmaids? And for that matter, of what use could Troysonet possibly be to me? If you're planning on kidnapping me, I'd at least like to know a few of these basic facts." Galen smiled vaguely and made a gently dismissive sweep of his hand and replied, "Well, I know little enough about him, so I cannot offer many details, but I can tell you that his name is Mr. White, and he entrusted me with specific instructions to retrieve you. What will be much more interesting information to you is the reason that he has made this request." He examined her closely and discovered that she had a subtle but intense charm. Her curiosity was like a wildfire, and she did not seem satisfied with the few basic facts that he had provided. He was not surprised when she suggested, "Well, go on then. It's not as if anything could traumatize me more than I already have been." She tried to smile, though it looked more like a grimace, and stood up. She moved to the wash basin and splashed her face, took down her mangled bun, removed the ivory sticks, which were miraculously intact, and began pulling leaves out of her matted hair. Galen smoothed his deep brown peasant shirt and bent towards his long legs. He rested his elbows on his knees and leaned forward somewhat, regarding Rella with a serious gaze. "You and I are, shall we say, similar. This is the reason I have been sent to collect you." He turned and looked out the window again. "Last night, when I told you that you were in the wrong line of work, I was dead serious. About 5 years ago, I lived in Mintang, south of here, near the Pajong Delta. I was just a scrappy young ruffian and the son of a farmer. I had a visit from a man who told me, essentially, what I am telling you now, which is that you have a powerful gift, and that your age, along with the current season and something to do with the planetary alignment, is, in addition to your parentage, culminate in one of two outcomes. Either you will die, or you will arise as a powerful seer. And I've been lucky enough to become one of these." Rella laughed and narrowed her eyes. "You can't be serious. My parentage is not even remotely special. You must have me confused with someone else, sir. And for that I am sorry. You will have clearly wasted your time and energy saving me." She turned back to her mirror and began to brush out her matted locks. Galen sighed. "Did you not hear what I said? That I am the son of a farmer. My bloodline is no more apparently unusual than yours, but both of our mothers share a shameful, yet oddly fortuitous secret. Both of them had affairs at one time or another with sorcerers, and whether they were aware of the professions of their partners or not, they were nonetheless affected by long-term exposure to supernatural vapors. Though it had no direct upon them, it did indeed have a great impact upon their unborn children. That would be you and me." He pointed to himself and then to her. Rella listened, one eyebrow cocked, as she dug out a small portion of tree bark that she had managed to entangle itself in her hair. When we turn 25, full seasonal cycles old, we must undergo certain tasks and procedures, and if we do not, then our powers turn sour and become a dark illness which leaches the life out from us. It is up to you, though, to decide if you care to accompany me back to Troysonet. Regardless of what instructions I have been given, I have decided that I will not take you without your permission. There's been quite enough of that for one night." Ruella's hand, still holding the brush, became motionless. She turned to Galen's claims over in her head. Her first question, following a period of deep consideration, was, If I'm to suspend my overpowering disbelief and give you the benefit of the doubt, since following me or not, you did preserve my safety and dignity, if I am supposed to have some sort of supernatural gift, why is it exactly that I have yet to experience anything of the sort? I have never had any visions, nor have I manifested any sort of mystical skills at all, ever. How on earth can I accept the proclamation that I have a sort of sight beyond what my own two eyes provide me? Rella narrowed her gaze at the suave man who now sat beside her window, looking overly smug. Would it not be more logical to deduce that you wish to transport me as a slave or indentured wife? I may not have magical gifts, but I am a young, healthy, and female. I know what happens to overly trusting women, as it almost befell me this very evening. And beyond that, I do not wish to be a slave of anyone, which seems to me the likely outcome, should I put my trust in your claims. Galen made an exaggerated shrug and pointed up to the sky. You see the moon? It has waned almost entirely. I am told by others more knowledgeable than myself in this area that moon phases are also an element in predicting the time that these skills will appear. This day, Rella, is as close to your birthday as anyone can guess at, since your mother was remiss in recording the date with the town scribes. But my employers have done their research and have entrusted me to come here this very week, for they suspect that they should be manifesting within the next few days. He rubbed the back of his neck with his hand casually and continued, If you choose not to believe me, that is perfectly acceptable. I will not hold it against you, but you will certainly perish without my assistance, and for that reason I will be lodging here until the end of the harvest festival. And after that, I will be gone, with or without your company. He seemed nonchalant but attentive, hoping perhaps that his casual manner would extract an agreement. Rella sat down again and leaned in close to Galen. Her hair fell loosely over her shoulders, now shining in black, framing her round, moon-like face. Her skin seemed inhumanly pale in the evening light, and she appeared both fierce and cautious, all at once. They studied one another for a moment, until she said quietly, Very well, we will wait. You have obtained a great deal of trust from me tonight, and I hope I have spent it wisely. If anything unprecedented happens, I will contact you, and we will make the journey together. If, as I suspect, nothing happens, then you have wasted a perfectly good harvest festival trailing and monitoring an ordinary girl, waiting for her to suddenly become extraordinary. She stood abruptly. I will sleep now, she said, and briskly began to fluff her pillows in a clear invitation for Galen to depart. He stood up, stretched his long body, and yawned. Before he left, he turned, and in a voice that seemed extremely ominous, to Rella said, If you find your balance suddenly vanishes, or your vision turns gray, your hearing becomes noticeably muffled, or if you become afflicted with an intractable megrim, please come and see me at once. He shut the door, and Rella stood still, listening to his footsteps echo down one of the flight of stairs, then veer to the left. She waited to move until she heard his door open and close beneath her. She still held a half-fluffed pillow in her hand, and she sat down on her bed, clutching in her lap attempting to make sense of everything that had just occurred that evening. When she realized it was pointless, she changed into her nightgown and crawled into her bed, though sleep was decidedly and utterly impossible.